Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to make a comment at this time? Okay, hearing none. We do have a presentation this evening from Mr. Trent Atkins, Emergency Management Update.
Yep. Thank you very much. I was asked to give maybe a 90-day update of the activities that we've been doing in emergency management, so I put together this document for you. If you look on page 2, I kind of broke this down based on the 4 activities that emergency management kind of dives into, and you can see that the preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery efforts that we do. The next page, you'll see some of the things that I've been working on. We've been looking very closely at the crisis communications plan, how we, not only how do we notify the community, but also have that interaction with the community during an emergency or disaster, as well as among public safety agencies, how we'll speak and what would be things like formal communications versus informal communications. So that's a work in progress. One of the other things that we've been working on that we're kind of excited about is that we're developing a county-wide emergency plan to respond to an active shooter situation. Specifically the schools, but of course the efforts that we're putting together, could be at a grocery store or any public event where perhaps an act of violence takes place. About 2 weeks ago, we were able to get about 40 some people into a room, included all of the school administrators, police and fire chiefs, as well as EMS within the county. And we laid out a pretty aggressive plan, looking at having our plans actually completed by the end of this year, training sometime this winter, and then hopefully getting into our first full-scale exercise by June, and then looking at more specific planning that might be necessary after that for individual schools. So a lot of work, a lot of effort being made in that area. The other project most recently that I've been working on is I've been working closely with the Steam Railroad Institute. As you know, in just a few more days, they'll start running their train up to Ashley with about 1,000 people a night, 6 nights a week. This is developing an emergency response plan not only for those basic emergencies, but also for any type of security issues that might arise. So we've been working really closely with them and should actually have a plan completed early next week before they start next Friday. We've also been working on the Shiawassee County basic emergency plan, looking at updating. There's a lot of resources that we need to make sure that we're touching on, making sure phone numbers are updated. We've actually pulled together our local planning team. We've met once now. The local planning team is the group that looks at not only how do we move emergency management forward and better protect our community, but also how do we manage our grants. We've also been working on additional emergency response plans. Been working with, the retirement home up here. No, the retirement home. No, that's moving. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Pleasant View, thank you. See, everybody knows with me, right? Been working with Pleasant View as they develop their emergency plans to support their move from their old facility to their new facility. One of the other things that I've been kind of excited about, we have 3 volunteer assistant emergency managers, if you will. Sue Buzzanardo, who is retired from Michigan State University Police Department, who spent 13 years in emergency management at MSU, who lives in the county, has reached out to me and wants to volunteer and support emergency management. And so with Sue's law enforcement background and emergency management background, of course she spent a lot of time building active shooter plans for Michigan State University, and so she's assisting with our active shooter planning that we're doing. The second volunteer is Troy Gordon. As many of you know, Troy is a retired dispatcher from the 911 center. Troy was looking to do some things to keep him busy, and so he's been volunteering with us and kind of helping me keep the plans moving, if you will. Troy has a lot of knowledge and knows the county very well, a lot of the resources and assets. And then the third individual, Rick Smith. Rick Smith is originally from the area. He moved to Maine. He was a deputy emergency manager for a community out there. He's moved back. He's got a lot of experience working with volunteer resources, and Rick has agreed to help us to kind of boost up and support our volunteer resources, such as the CERT team, community emergency response team, and our amateur radio operators. So we're very happy to have all three of them on board assisting with different activities. The next page, you'll see that now to date in the 90 days, I've made at least 4 of the township meetings to introduce myself, to kind of explain what emergency management is. I would encourage you, if you would like me to attend a township meeting in your area, give me a date, give me a time, and we'll try to make it there, and it'd be great to come in and talk to your folks, so let me know. The next page, this was just kind of a fun page. You know, I was here less than a month, and of course there was a threat from North Korea, and of all the places they could find to interview, they interviewed the small county emergency manager from Shiawassee and wanted to know if Shiawassee County was prepared for a nuclear attack. And you know, of course, I explained to them that, you know, a nuclear attack, not unlike any other natural disaster or emergency we might have, you know, we encourage people to be prepared, and, you know, we have plans to deal with resources and things like that. So later I found out that there were no other emergency managers that would return their calls. So lesson learned. The next time they call, you know, I'll just put them on mute. So anyways, the next page, talking about social media. Of course, we've had Facebook and Twitter for a few years now in the county. You know, what I found in my experience is that social media is a good ally during emergencies to provide crisis communications and interaction. I've used that on multiple emergencies and disasters that I've managed in the past. And we found that you know, allowing the community to respond back and say, hey, my power's out here, or I've got this problem, helps us really to get a better situational awareness of what's taking place. To date, we've got about 2,900 followers, as you can see. I've thrown a couple of the statistics. You know, they're kind of going up and down, but the one that I was most excited about is right there in the middle. According to Facebook, we've reached over 11,400 people in the last 28 days with our Facebook posts. Now, I'm sure a lot of them are the same people over and over again, but that's a lot of hits. So as a part of our crisis communications plan, I would encourage you to like our Facebook page if you have Facebook, and maybe perhaps recommend that those that are following you to like the emergency management page, because it will be a key communications tool during a disaster for us. Participated and worked with a number of agencies on exercising in the last 90 days. We have done a CERT functional exercise, and Commissioner Marks was there for that exercise. We tried to get him to be a patient, but we took him in anyways. So we appreciate you being there. We've also participated in a functional exercise for contaminated patients, or a decon exercise at Memorial Hospital. We've been participating in a statewide radio function exercise, looking at you know, how we communicate throughout the state with emergency management during a crisis. We've also participated in a it's called MySims. It's a software tool that's used throughout the state for emergency managers for situational awareness, command and control, resourcing, and things like that. So it kind of brings emergency management together, and it allows us to communicate directly with the state and vice versa during a disaster. And then we've also completed an EOC technology drill where we looked at, we kind of fired everything up to see what was working, what wasn't working, what are some of the gaps we have, and everything's looking pretty good. We had to put a couple of help tickets in to fire some things back up, but for the most part, I think the EOC is looking pretty good. The next page, talking about some training activities. I believe that all of you received a flyer that looks like this. So on Monday, the 13th at 6:30 p.m., we'll be hosting a emergency management and public officials conference or seminar over to Caledonia Hall. We'll go 6:30 to 8:30. I have a tool, it's a document that I put together a number of years ago for public officials that goes through explaining everything from what emergency management is to what's the declaration process for a state emergency or a federal declaration, and then what type of resources can you expect during a disaster or during a recovery stage if there's a declaration. And then on November 28th, we're going to be holding that MySims, that software. We're going to be hosting some training. I still need to reach out to a number of departments to find some people that need to be trained on that. And of course, we would use that during any type of an emergency or disaster. Vehicles and equipment. So prior to my arrival, a couple of years ago, it was determined that by the fire chiefs and emergency management that they would no longer have a technical rescue or a hazmat team. I wholeheartedly support that. The cost of maintaining that type of equipment and training for first responders at that level is incredible. And for the one or maybe 2 times a year you would roll that out, we can call resources from neighboring counties to come in and support us, and so that's what our plan would be. A lot of the equipment was already turned over to some of those other counties, to their hazmat and technical rescue team. So we're using the trailers and we're kind of turning them around to really to something that's more suitable to what we need, and that is really scene support, incident support. We've got, as you can see in the top picture there, we have a new vehicle that we've recently acquired from the military 1033 program, of course at no cost. This was a former bio lab for the military. I think it has like 7,000 miles on it. You know, it's pretty much unblemished. The inside is all stainless, and so we've taken out some of the equipment and we're in the process of turning that into a communications vehicle. It has a 12,000 kVW generator on it, which will provide a lot of scene support, as well as if we had to hook it up next to a building, I mean, it would probably light up many buildings in the area. It also has telecommunications capability, and so we're just boosting that. The idea is that we can roll that out on the scene and support communications either through Wi-Fi, through computer technology, radio technology. We're putting in what I call the black box, which is a piece of equipment that we've had in the EOC for a number of years that has several radios on it, and you can plug in radios and cell phones and bring all communications together on one frequency. So we're in the process of doing that. As we're going through our equipment inventory, we are remarking the emergency management vehicles to reflect its new home in the Sheriff's Department, and you can see pictures below. I know yours probably aren't in color, but I'd be happy to show you mine if you'd like. The next page, Local Emergency Planning Committee. That's something that falls under emergency management. Local Emergency Planning Committee looks at hazards within the county, very specific to hazardous materials, But they also look at things like winter weather hazards, and they promote training and education awareness, things like that. But within our county, we have 53 sites that are considered 302 sites. 302 sites are facilities that have reportable quantities of hazardous materials that, if released, potentially could do either environmental damage or harm to somebody. And as you can see by this, 19 of those are facilities which take up about 36% of our sites. 29 of those 53 are farms, and that's the anhydrous, that's being used, but they're required to have an emergency plan. And then 5 of them are other. This would be things like your cellular buildings that they have out there where they make their connections and phones and things like that. They have some chemicals in there that are falling to that reported quantity. So what we do is we go out to these 53 sites and we write emergency plans for them. We have 11 new ones this year which are going to require full plans. The rest of them only require updates, and usually that's just a matter of changing phone numbers and maybe changing quantity of chemicals and things like that. I've also responded to several incidents since I've been here. These are just a few. I've made several structure fires, made a gas leak, the Shiawassee County Fair, of course, the Duran's Veterans Music Fundraiser. I helped support that. And then we've had 2 wind events that weren't countywide, but on 9/22, the village of Vernon actually had a straight line wind go right down the main road and did quite a bit of damage to the trees, dropped trees on a car, damaged some homes, wires down, power outages, that kind of thing. So I went out there to support them on that. And then on 10/10, in the far southwest corner, literally right on the line, because the one house was in Shiawassee County and the one right next to it was in Ingham County. We had what the Weather Service is calling a straight line wind, but suspicious. It knocked over a couple of barns, one of which was a block barn. It took out some trees, made what looks like a circular path in the middle of a cornfield, and then ran a quarter of a mile down that cornfield. So we went out there. We investigated it, did a little damage assessment, reported it to the National Weather Service, and then they took it from there. But they determined that it was straight line winds, but suspicious. I responded to various other calls that I couldn't remember all of them, but not too long ago we had a 911 outage over in the Lanesburg area and part of Perry because someone dug up the phone line in the middle of a field and then decided to bury it to try to bury what they had done. It took Frontier some time to find it, but once they found it, they were able to fix it pretty quickly. And then we've had various power outage pockets, one of which took out emergency communications in Perry and Morris probably about a month ago, but it lasted for only a few hours. Some of the other things that we've been working on is, of course, the EMPG, the Emergency Management Program Grant, which is a funnel through from the federal government to the state, and then they provide salary support to emergency management programs, 390 programs within the state. And then the second one is the Homeland Security Grant Program. We're closing out 2015. It's interesting how these grants run. They run a year behind as a start, and then they'll run 2 or 3 years into the future. So we're actually closing up 2015 in December. With that, Code Red was paid for, as well as radio batteries. We're also finalizing 2016. We're paying for the second year of Code Red, and that runs through June of next year. We're also purchasing some replacement radios, and I've been working with the fire chiefs. They're going to be implementing a countywide accountability system for firefighters, and the idea is that, they on a very regular basis provide mutual aid to each other, and many times a firefighter will show up that this fire chief over here has never seen before. And so having accountability for who they are, what they're doing on the scene is very important. So it's a matter of using a tag system that'll be consistent across the county. The second thing that I put is kind of the draft, if you will, of the 2018 work plan that we have ahead of us here. You can see that there's a number of meetings that I attend on a regular basis, whether it's the Region 1 Homeland Security Board, Shiawassee 911 Board, SCALE, which is the law enforcement, fire chiefs meeting, local planning team meeting, etc. Just to give you an idea what some of the standing meetings are. That doesn't include meetings that we have to do planning at that are on the fly. The next page, looking at some of the training and exercising. This winter and into the spring, we'll be doing public information officer training. We're going to bring Texas A&M in to do that. Texas A&M provides training to first responders at no charge through federal government Homeland Security grants. So we'll have a public information officer course that's coming in that's 2 days. We'll be doing accountability system training for the fire service. We're also going to bring in the incident command 300 and 400 class, which is required for fire and police officers. We'll be conducting the active shooter response training, as well as beginning to do some exercises like the tabletop and functional exercise. We plan on having a local emergency planning committee orientation. We have several new members on that board, including Commissioner Root. We're going to try to do quarterly EOC training to bring those that would respond to the EOC during a disaster, kind of bring them up to speed on where they need to be, help them along. We're going to be sending our volunteers to severe weather spotter training in the hopes that sometime next year we can develop our storm weather net. We did that in Lansing and Ingham County, and they do that in a number of other counties. When there's a threat of severe weather, a couple of radio operators will come into the EOC. They'll be able to monitor a radar map. Those other volunteers that are used as spotters, if you will be out in the field, and their vehicles, through their amateur radio, have vehicle locators. And so on this radar map, you can actually see the spotters on the radar map. And so as they're making reports of perhaps unusual looking clouds or activities, they would be seen on this radar. And it's not just seen by us, it's seen by the National Weather Service and others. And then of course, after a storm comes through, we can send those volunteers out to do what we call a windshield assessment, which evaluates very quickly damage to things like roads, public utilities, schools, and other major infrastructure. In the summer, again, we're hoping to have our first full-scale active shooter scenario. In the fall, we're going to be bringing in TEACs, and much like what I'm going to do next Monday, but in a full day, Texas A&M will bring in their public officials conference, where they kind of walk through a little more in depth what we'll talk about Monday, and they also run the group through the second part of the day is really running you through an exercise and utilizing current plans and guidance and saying how would you do this. And so it's a very good course. I've had them before. We also plan on doing another LEPC exercise. I forgot to mention we're looking at one in the spring as well, and then our continued EOC training. And then the very last page here that I provided was a list of the different type of planning activities that we'll be working on in 2018, including the active shooter plan, county building emergency response plans. I think that many of you are familiar with that little red flip book. I saw one sitting out here on top of the counter. Our emergency response plans need some updating and a little more detail to them, and so we're going to be completing those. We've actually started those, at least started the preparing for updating those plans about a week ago. We'll be looking at search and rescue standards. We're hoping to create an event calendar. One of the things that we find is that part of emergency management, Homeland Security, is having that situational awareness to what's happening within the county to be able to provide resources and support. There's a number of small fairs, events, activities that go on throughout the county that we don't know about. Sheriff's Department doesn't know about. Public safety, probably in that community knows about, but it's difficult for us to offer up resources or, look at the homeland security aspect of it if we don't know about it. So we're hoping to reach out to the different jurisdictions and have them provide the information that we can create a county event calendar. Of course, we'll continue with our grant management. We have a new Homeland Security grant that should be arriving probably in April of next year. We talked a little bit about the storm net development. We'll be continuing with the Hazardous Materials 302 site plans. We're hoping by summer we'll have the emergency response plans done, and we'll be able to start talking about government continuity of operations. So what happens if we lose the internet or we lose power for long periods of time? How will we write checks? How will we manage the county if we can't do it like we normally do today? Are there locations that we need to move to? Things of that nature. We'll be continuing with our volunteer management plan. We're hoping to roll out the rest of our incident support vehicles by summer. We're already beginning, and we'll be addressing the critical infrastructure and key infrastructure security assessments. That's everything from substations, as an example, which is very important to us, to things like the courthouse across the street, this facility, and others that play a critical role within our community. Ongoing updating current plans, and we'll be addressing probably a new mass notification system. I don't expect that we will stay with Code Red come next year because of its cost, its ongoing cost and maintenance. We need to address looking at something that perhaps is a little less expensive. So, any questions for me? I tried not to take up too much time.
Any questions?
I think you did a very good job. Just a couple things that you recovered on your saving. As far as vehicles and equipment and trailers, that you're fairly well set at this point.
I think we'll manage with what we have.
And then as far as grants and stuff, you're able to secure the grants that we had. And is there other grants out there that hadn't been looked at in the past, that other money and stuff that we might be able to bring in to help do some of this work?
Yeah, we're continuously looking for those. The unfortunate thing is that over the past few years, the grants have been drying up. And in fact, we've heard that in 2019, that they'll be looking at a 20 to 25% match, which really might be a showstopper for most communities, such as Shiawassee County, where we have to come up with 25% per grant.
Can you share with the board here what you guys have discovered, what you and the sheriff discovered in terms of the Lanesburg School District being outside the city limits and problems with the city being able to respond and corrective measures you guys have already taken, and then also the issue with schools with the doors, big number?
Sure. Well, I don't know that there's really a problem, but obviously there's some logistical challenges with some of the outlying schools, and I hate to go into too much detail because of the Homeland Security implementations and the risk of some of that information getting out, but we're going to be working very closely with the schools to help them to really harden their programs. They do have a contract currently with a company out of the Saginaw area that's been working with them for about 3 years. So we'll continue to work closely with their contractor as well as the schools to not only prepare them, but also to prepare our first responders. Did I answer both? I think.
Yeah, I think Jeremy and I were at a Rotary meeting or something. Sheriff Legault talked about the unique situation in Lanesburg High School is the only school outside of the city limits. And there were some issues, I think, like deputization just happened or whatever, so the city could respond, but.
Well, I know where you're going with this. So, one of the things that, of course, the sheriff identified before I was even here, and we've discussed at length, is that many of our outlying community schools are pretty far-reaching, and they may, at any given time, we're lucky if we have 6 or 8 officers on the road 3 of those usually come from Owasso, maybe 1 or 2 from the state police. So we can be fairly limited on our response, which can lengthen that time of response and backup support. So one of the things that the sheriff did after he came into office, which was fantastic, is he went out and deputized all the police chiefs, which now allows them to cross borders. In the past, you know, there was pretty much a wall. You know, you can't leave this jurisdiction, you can't come into this jurisdiction, and that's been eliminated completely. So it allows them to support each other in the out-county.
Commissioner Cassius.
Mr. Chairman, kudos to you, Mr. Atkins, for a very busy 90 days and thorough report here. A couple of quick questions. You mentioned the hazmat services, which we don't currently have capabilities, and we would call upon adjoining counties. Do we have MOUs in place, or sort of what's the communication process in the event that we?
Yeah. So I think the first part of your ask me the first part of your question again. I'm sorry.
Well, just you mentioned we would call on sort of adjoining counties in the event of a hazmat situation because
Yeah.
we don't have them. So I'm just wondering, do we have any type of agreements in place with those counties to provide those services in the event?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Shiawassee County is part of Region 1's Homeland Security region, along with 9 other counties, everything from as far away as Lenawee, up to Gratiot, Eaton County, and everything in between. Both Livingston County and Ingham County have hazmat technician level response teams. In fact, prior to me taking this job, probably a month or so prior, there was a spill of an anhydrous ammonia vehicle, trailer on the road, and Lansing came in and supported the confinement of that. Unfortunately, there is no written MOU within the region, and that's something that we've talked about for many, many years, but is still yet to come to fruition. But it's not been an issue with anybody picking up and coming out. So one of the things I hope to address in the future, specifically with those teams, but at this time, no.
Okay. And then just I'm interested in your general observations now being 90 days on the job, sort of 100% being complete state of readiness. Where do you think Shiawassee County is today?
Well, I think that, you know, the good thing is that, you know, firefighters, police officers, EMS, they're very used to those expanding incidents that take place, and they're very good about improvising when they need to. We're never going to be 100% prepared for any event. I can assure you that. I've been through several, and as much as you prepare, there's always something that you learn from. I would say that Shiawassee County, we have some things we need to accomplish. We have some gaps that we need to fill, but I feel confident today if something was to happen that we would do fine. We would recover from it.
I have no doubt. I was just curious, not to put you on the spot or
Sure.
anything, but just a relative understanding of where you think we're at.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Any other questions?
Not a question, more of a statement. Just thank you for accepting and coming on board. You know, in the 3 years I've been here, that's the first report or understanding or even knowledge of what emergency management's doing in our communities. So I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. And I encourage the other commissioners, reach out to Trent, have him come to your township meetings. He's been to a few of mine, and the board's really been, you know, I've received calls the next day, you know, that, wow, I didn't realize all that was going on, and you guys got some good people in place. So the sheriff and Trent have attended a few meetings with me and kind of given reports and updates on what they've been doing so far. It's been appreciated by the community, so thanks again.
You bet. Thank you.
You opened a lot of eyes here tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm gonna put Judge Clarkson on the spot just a little bit. You're not officially on the schedule, on the agenda, but this would be an ideal time for those of you that aren't familiar with what this might be about. It's a situation that came to light, and we started to deal with it last month, and in respect for Judge Clarkson, we gave him some time to respond. He was not completely prepared last month, so this is your time now to kind of run through some of the information that you provided us in defense of the actions
Well-
taken in the past.
Yes, we started at the beginning. We came and asked the board if we could reorganize the Friends of the Court and gave some preliminary plans of how we would do it for the first part of it, and would do it with less wages because we believe and found that the Friend of the Court hadn't been reorganized since before computers. So there were job descriptions and things that didn't make a lot of sense. So we did that, and that was approved by the prior board, not your group.
2016.
And then, when it came time after the election, Carolyn Wilson left the Front of the Court. She took one of the employees with her, and I believe an employee retired. And that was the time to do the second reorganization, or complete it. So Ms. Bray called Bonnie Toski and asked her if she could do that, and Bonnie said that's management's rights. I think there was some miscommunication. Bonnie answered the question as a labor law question, and the question was posed as a separation of power question. And so when she was told she could, she went ahead and did it. So there have been people there for probably 10 months. 10 months who were getting a certain pay, and unbeknownst to us, a month ago when I came over to the board to talk about indigent defense, found out on the agenda was a resolution that would return people to their pay, which I don't quite understand how it would work because that was the pay they hired in at. But be that as it may, that's where, and I was quite ambushed, and I asked for some time, and Christie prepared a memo that laid out what was done and so on. So at this point, the Friend of the Court is functioning with less staff and less total payroll, and I think doing a better job than they've done in years. Judge Stewart we got more enforcement officers. We're focusing on enforcement, and there's people out there who aren't getting their child support, and it's a Friend of the Court's job to figure out why it isn't and see if there's some way they can be coerced into it. And I think we're doing more with less. And at this point, try to go back. I understand there's some issues, but when we came here and asked the board, can we do this? And the board said yes, we took it and ran with it. There's a number of issues in trying to undo it now. Who's going to negotiate with the union? Is the county's labor lawyer going to do it, or is Fitness going to do it? I don't know who's going to. There's issues there. I think it's unwise and going to create more problems and controversy than just leaving it alone, and understand that these people got a raise, and when what we hope happens is the wage study is done and people get raises, that they won't. But ultimately, you people are elected to do your job, and you'll do your job the best way you think you can. So if you have any questions for Ms. Bray, she is here to answer questions. Judge Stewart is here if you have any questions about the actual function of the Friend of the Court.
I think just for clarification for the audience and anybody who may be watching, because there was a wage freeze and has been for a number of years, this came to light as raises being given in one department, and that seemed to go against what had been recommended for a number of years up to that point. Now, granted, it was approved by the previous commission and discovered or rediscovered or reevaluated by this commission. So thus
we're not
the
completely.
reason this all came up, and this commission initiated it, gave you, and are giving you time.
And you
now
did,
to-
and I appreciate that.
And I would say, Do you want to offer some more before we get into questions?
I would just submit that we got a raise. They were completely new positions. We created a three-pronged attack to support enforcement. We now have, which we've never had before in the history of this county, 3 support enforcement officers. And recall, we did get approval from the board to attach to those 3 enforcement officers a deputy. A deputy to go out there and wrestle up the folks that aren't paying their child support. And the number of folks that Deputy Duffield is ringing up, you need these 3 support enforcement officers to keep up. And the output is significant. We are collecting more child support than we ever have in the past. We've got 3 enforcement officers rolling orders up to the family court judges every day, and you've got Officer Duffield out there collaring people with bench warrants for not paying support every day. I had a stack this afternoon. So it's working. And I'm sorry we're in this mess, and I am, but the bottom line is, Ms. Bray with her actions has saved the county in excess of $80,000. And she's doing more with less. They're streamlined and they're effective. And that department is where it needs to be. If there's any way that we can work this out so that Ms. Bray can continue to operate at the high function that she is now, certainly would like to hear it.
I have some questions. So, how many staff were you at prior to the reorganization?
Need to direct your question.
To anybody, any of the 3, I guess, whoever, if you want to.
Well, it's not as cut and dry. I had a position that was open, that when I started, it had been filled, so that was a vacancy. There was a part-time employee up on circuit court that was covering referee responsibilities as a court, in her capacity as a court reporter. And then I had, 10 employees and 1 part-time employee, but my part-time employee wasn't accounted for. So it's kind of a complicated mess.
Okay.
So I had 10 and a half, but then a half a person employee up in circuit court in a position that hadn't been filled. So I guess in total I would have had, 12 people.
Okay, and how many do you have now?
Myself, including myself, it would have been 13. Myself included, I have, I'm sorry, I forgot the referee. So I would have had 13. Myself included now, I have 12 because we gave Deputy Duffield just this past April.
Okay. My second question, and I don't know how this process works. I read in here that the bench warrant fees were increased. Is that like the state gives a recommendation or a guideline, and then you guys internally raise them, or?
No, statutorily, we're enabled to collect bench warrant fees. It's allowed by statute. Traditionally, some of the front of the court offices do collect bench warrant fees, some of them don't. We had left our bench warrant fee at $25 for a very long period of time. It was approved to move that bench warrant fee to $25, and the fee is actually to cover what they call the cost associated, I think the statute reads, the cost associated to basically the administration of getting to a point where you're at the bench warrant phase. Certainly other counties, I believe Ingham County bench warrant fee is $275. So it certainly costs a lot more for the work that we have to do to go through a show cause hearing, to either have somebody not appear, to issue the bench warrant, to have judge sign it, to then process it, to forward it to the sheriff's department. Certainly all those costs will exceed $100, but
And that's what's set at now is 100?
yes, it's currently set at 100, and that was effective June 1st of this year.
So what's, and just for informational purposes, what's minimum that would be due to activate a bench warrant? Like, I mean, it's usually $200, $300, $500, $2,500, $5,000?
Anytime you're more than 2 months behind in child support, we go out, that's our office policy. I believe the statute allows for actually 1 month behind in arrears, but I'm not sure of a single office that asks if you're 1 month behind. I think there's some leniency. So once you're 2 months behind in child support, then we have the authority to go ahead and set a show cause hearing. Ultimately, if you don't appear, that's typically when the bench warrant's issued.
And then, so the savings, the $80,000 of savings, tell me how this works next year with the budget process then.
So the $80,000, that doesn't include the benefit package because ultimately about 2.5 people were not hired through the process. So the approximate $80,000 is simply salaries alone that didn't get replaced. It doesn't include the benefit packages, as you're all well aware of, can be anywhere from, I don't know, $30,000 to $50,000, I'm speculating here. So that $80,000 is still artificially low if you include the benefit package. Going forward, I'm just asking if everything remained as is. Based on when I started in 2016 to where I'm at now, that's the cost savings between the reorganizations that I've completed over the past, essentially the past year. That started in with the approval from June of 2016 up until the last person I replaced in January of 17. I had Ms. Wilson leave my office. She took another individual. I had a 42-year senior employee retiring, only give me 2 weeks notice, and I had one person out on medical leave. So one entire function of the front of the court could not function effective November 1st. So I was really scrambling. It's my order entry, so pretty much any order, and we process on average 100 orders a month, had come to a screeching halt. So I was very much scrambling. I appreciate Ms. Wilson staying on board to help out. She was knowledgeable about order entry, and I appreciate her efforts, as well as her deputy clerk, who also had some limited experience. So I scrambled. I got a couple other people trained. I sent them to Macomb for training in the month of December because orders have to be adjusted. These are people's accounts that need to be modified, monies that need to be collected, and if we don't have the correct income withholding orders to an employer, we're messing with people's livelihood. We're also messing with child support for families. So this is not something that I could sit back on and just let coast.
Yeah, so with the savings of money, I mean, like what's the plan for next year then? Does that mean that that's another employee you could hire, or a different program you could offer, or engage in?
I wasn't, my people have been wonderful. I've asked them to do more and more and more. They've absorbed the responsibilities. I didn't have any intent necessarily to come to the board at all and request for a new hire. The only thing that I had in the back of my mind is a custody investigator, but that would be under a 1099 status, so that would be zero money again that I'm requesting from the board. But that's a discussion that I need to have with the judges at a later date if that's an avenue that we want to explore. But that has nothing to do with affecting my budget in any way, shape, or form. It would be a 1099 status, a contractual person like many other counties currently do. So I'm not looking to hire anybody else. I'm just looking and asking that everything that I've done just remain in place. This was the management assistant report that I was handed with all the changes that needed to go into effect. It's quite lengthy. I've done, I think, a fairly good job with addressing a fair majority of these. If not, I'm confident at probably 75% of these in the just under 2 years that I've been here. And I've asked my people to do more and more. They have completely, not one person has the same job function that when I started. They are completely different job functions with a lot more responsibility. There were many functions that the front of the court wasn't even performing, which were statutorily obligated to perform certain functions. And so those duties had to go somewhere. And with that, that was the intent of the reorganization, was the added responsibilities and duties, coupled with the fact that I had many recommendations that needed to be implemented. And based on how my office receives funding under the CRP contract, everything rides on collections, child support. So I did exactly that, and I beefed up the enforcement. I beefed up the review and modification to right-size child support orders so that people aren't paying an exorbitant amount, and they're paying actually what they can afford. We had one person doing that job part-time. That was half of her responsibility. I now have 2 full-time people doing that job. So I've worked extremely hard to get my office in line to where it needs to be to meet my performance measures, and also to help Judge Stewart and the rest of the family judges that cover family, to help them meet their numbers and get the work processed. I think Ms. Wilson can attest to the fact that front of the court pumps out a lot of work.
I don't know that any commissioner, maybe I can't speak for all of them. I'm not questioning the efficiency of the reorganization at all. I would be the last one to say that I really understand everything you just explained. I think that the biggest question here is, if you could answer this in a simple way, there were raises approved in 2016. And I understand that those were implemented. Were there any other raises implemented in addition to that? Because that seems to be the biggest question here.
Are you talking about pay grades or levels?
Actual money raises.
Well,
whatever you wanna call them.
people still, under the freeze, when they get 6 months, 1 year, and so on.
But we're not talking about this.
I guess,
Talking
agree.
grades.
We're talking about pay grades.
Talking grades.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can-
And that's the thing we want to address really, if we keep talking back and forth, the services and the savings.
Right.
The approves were in the memo, 5, 4, 4, 5, 9, 8, 3. And we're at 6, 6, 6, 11, 6. So I mean, we're higher than what was approved, and I don't think that's what you've understood when I tried to communicate it to you is, yes, there was a memo approved by this board. It was brought in on Wednesday, it was approved on a Wednesday and put through the board, and that was the only notice we got was that Wednesday. I voted for it. Didn't do my due diligence, didn't look into it. But what we were presented with is even different than the explanation we received. And when they went from 3s to 5s, 3s to 4s, 3s to 4s, but didn't go to 3 to 5. There would have been no problem had they gone from 3 to 5, because that's what we approved. Would have been no problem had this other individual went from a 3 to a 4. They went from a 3 to a 5. That's where the problem is that comes in. Yes, we approved a reorganization, we approved a plan, but we went above and beyond the pay grades that were authorized by the state court administrator in this reorganization. So that's the only issue. I wish we didn't have to have the long drawn out discussions, but I just don't think it's getting through that. That's the problem.
I understand the problem fully.
We're not
I'm
saying
giving you an
that-
explanation,
that
though.
you weren't approved to reorganize. Yes, you were approved to reorganize. The problem simply comes in with the pay grades. That's the problem.
Or even, I would say hindsight's 20/20. First reorganization, you were approved. You had to do a reorg of the reorg because Caroline was elected, she took a staffer with her, there were some other staff changes, so there was a second reorganization. But and I wasn't part of this board, but there was no reappearance to the board or notification of, hey, we made these changes, you approved it this much, or to come back to the board to say, okay, we've had some changes, we have your approval to do the reorg of the reorg at these amounts.
Well, Ms. Bray called Bonnie Toski, and that did not work out well, but she thought she had taken care of it when she did make that call.
That's exactly what Judge Clarkson just indicated. When I was presented with all this movement in my office, I had contacted Ms. Toski on more than one occasion. I had many conversations with her over the course of the tail end of 2016. And I explained to her what was going on. I explained that there was a reorganization, and that's when she told me that quote-unquote management had the right to reorganize. I explained I wasn't asking for any money. As a matter of fact, it resulted in a cost savings. And I had a board, went before the board, and there was a cost savings that they just approved. And that's when she kept saying, management has the right to reorganize. They can't tell you how to manage your office. You have the right to reorganize. I took that information, I drew up a plan, new jobs based on what my requirements were from scale on how to reorganize my office. I talked to the management about it, and I said, listen, I was just told by corporate counsel I can do this. The board already approved basically phase 1. This is just more or less a continuation of it. And so I drew up this plan, which ultimately resulted in $76,000 in savings. So yes, Commissioner Root, people did move from, that wasn't in that June 16 approval. There were people that moved from a 4 to a 5. The 2 people I most recently hired are 2 level 5 people. Those positions back in, under the old plan, were level 4 positions. They're entirely new jobs now. There's not one aspect of that job that I needed to replace that's the same job. So based on corporate counsel's recommendation, that's what I hung my hat on. And as Judge Clarkson indicated, maybe that was apparently wrong to do. And for that, I'm sorry for creating all this confusion. But I relied on corporate counsel, multiple discussions, not just a 1 5-minute, hey, this is what's going on in front of the court, what do you think? Many conversations with corporate counsel. And that's what I was told I had the right to do. The judges supported that because it was based on many more recommendations that I needed to adopt and implement from scale. So that's how, I will admit, yes, other positions were reclassified from 5s to 6s. But they're not the same job at all, not at all.
And we do know that no job can change a pay grade or be reclassified unless it comes before the Board of Commissioners. No position, no title, no nothing. depending on our RI study that was done back in '94, that's what the RI classifications are. The only way to move said individual out of a 4 or a 5 is that it be sent to RI for them to do a job study on, or an analysis of maybe what the pay grade market is now. It's different than '94. But it has to come before the Board of Commissioners, and it states there that the only body in the county that changes any classifications or pay grades is the Board of Commissioners, which is part of the separation of powers. And maybe, yes, I think that's where the confusion probably came in. She probably, because we don't want to micromanage, we don't want to reorganize your office. You're going to do whatever you want to do, just as everyone else does. They can reorganize and run efficient and do what they got to do to stay afloat. All we're concerned about is the money and where it's going, and that's the only thing we got to really keep our eye on. The rest of it, you know, everything else, good work, good job. You guys are doing good. No one's saying you're not. So that was our only concern, is these coming through, and you got to understand that there's not just friend of the court working in the county. Everybody hears about it, everybody knows about it, everybody talks about it. And you got to field phone calls. Why did they get raised? We haven't had raises in 10 years. Then you got to start thinking, well, they had a reorganization, there were some things done, but how do you explain that to everyone else? I mean, everyone else is waiting and wants raises, and then to hear you got a raise, okay, they got to swallow that, but they found you went higher than what you were approved even more. I mean, so it's just perception. I mean, I'm not saying you guys did anything wrong, you did anything, you were vindictive in doing it, you wanted to sneak it through, but perception is tough for some of the employees that have had a hard time.
Commissioner, you haven't said anything that's incorrect. So what can we do to fix this?
Well, I mean, that's
that's part of the problem, and obviously we thank you for all being here, and we can have this conversation. We respect your positions, applaud you for saving money, but it's the, you know, Jeremy gets the phone calls, I get the phone calls, and I also get from somebody else, but, you know, what do you tell all these other county employees? And I know hindsight's 20/20, and there were errors, and we've discussed it, but I don't know, what do we do?
no matter what we do, this body is the bad guy.
Because
Whether
either
we revert
your
to
employees are gonna be upset with us
whether we don't,
tomorrow,
we're bad to the other
or all the other
employees.
department employees are gonna be upset with us
I mean,
tomorrow.
yeah.
And then there's public perception within the media, and depending on who you are, and I'm not saying that it was a conspiracy or anyone being sneaky, to some of our constituents, it's not gonna pass the smell test one way or the other. We are in a, no matter how we vote, we're in a tough spot.
One other issue out there too.
You know, my only question is, if you're allowed to do this, and please forgive me if I don't assign you the right actual position you are, but let's say you're the manager of all of this, and you reorganized it. What if Larry decided he wanted to reorganize his staff and give everybody a raise? What's the difference between what you did and if any other department head decided to reorganize and give everybody else a raise without coming through the?
The first part, as Judge Clarkson indicated, we came here for the first half of it, and it was approved.
Right.
And I think the difference is that if other departments, unfortunately, maybe they don't have the luxury of the size staff that I have, but I compromised positions and I absorbed responsibilities, and I stayed within budget. I think the difficulty other departments would have is, unfortunately, they're smaller, and if they wanted to give their people raises, which I still disagree that these are raises.
They are raises. They are raises.
Okay.
Mr. Shiawassee's comment,
Okay.
common sense applies. They got raises.
I would probably assume that they're gonna be outside of their budget. Or there's a good chance that they would fall outside of their approved budget. I didn't fall outside of my budget. Not only did I not fall outside of it, but I saved money.
Save money.
So I guess that's the struggle that I have, is there's a cost savings. If I need to undo all this, then I'm looking at replacing 2.5 people in my department.
If I may, so just so I'm understanding, we're not being asked to vote on anything, right? As far as I understand, we're on a fact-finding mission to try and understand a series of events that have happened over 24 months or so. And I guess at this point, I mean, we've been waiting for this wage study. I still think that's related to this discussion that we're having generally about employees, the need to bring people up consistent with market rates. And so, personally, I mean, I would be apprehensive to cast any votes today or next month until we have a wage study and we can begin to look at that across the county and the 135 employees that reside here in the county. Look at it in context, take sort of a longer global view here, recognizing perhaps some missteps were made. I want to look forward here and not, sort of one step forward and two steps back here. It's not an easy issue. We're all struggling with it. There was a total cost savings. There's been a mea culpa. At least I feel there's been one here. I'd like to be pulling in the same direction. My experience is wages generally are going to be in Shiawassee County. But that's a bigger problem, and that's where I'd like to take the commission in focus, recognizing that I think they got the message loud and clear. And we'll go forward and continue and finish our fact finding and have a conversation at a later date about this.
Commissioner Parks?
So when I first came on, this being my 5th year, we were starting to see a trend, of department heads coming in and asking if we could reclassify employees, to get them more money. That went on for a while, and we were getting our studies back. Most of the time, they were due to get that raise because of how the rise salary came back. And at some point, I don't know if we made a resolution or where it would be in the 2014, we put a stop to that. We said that could no longer, we said that there's a freeze. We can no longer spend the money, have these department heads keep coming and asking for raises for their employees. So we put a stop to this. When this was all reorganized and we agreed to what we agreed to, I still stand for that because I voted for it. But unfortunately, whether it's right or wrong, I think that I have to stay with the salaries that was voted on in 2016.
I was also here at that time too, and if we do that, do everybody else, move them all up. When the new study comes through, everybody want to go up 2 or 3 steps, to catch up at least. So there's going to be a big problem. There's not enough money to go around. We'll just barely get by now with what we got. So. Even though the new study comes through, there's no guarantee we're even going to get any raises. If there's not more money, I don't know where we're going to get it from.
How much of the actual salary comes from our general fund? We do like a 33%, right? So that means 66% of the salaries of these individuals comes from state and federal.
Well, if I don't perform at the level I need to perform and my operations go down, we don't get the 66%.
I am aware of
So
that. So we're
the
talking,
cost-
how many thousand are we really talking? So
Cost
I see this
savings-
$10,000 raise for one individual. When
It-
I immediately hear that, I'm ticked. But how much really is coming out
It's
of our
really
general fund?
coming out of the general fund, 3,000, a third. You folks, the general fund only covers 1/3 of my budget. I'm federally funded under a CRP contract for 2/3 of all of my operations, my postage, my supplies, the paper I purchase, every ounce of front of the court is 2/3 paid by the federal government. It's only 1/3 paid by the county. So, when I'm giving, when an employee moves up a new step and they went up $6,000, it's really only $2,000 in the grand scheme of things.
Is that different in all courts, the various courts?
Oh, they're the only one that have the front of the court and the,
Steve Willis.
Steve Willis, who does the attorneys in the prosecutor's office, are the only people covered under the CRP grants.
So, Mr. Chair, it's my recommendation. I agree with Commissioner Costello at this time. Maybe we continue our investigation, make sure that, but if we're talking 33% of the money, I don't agree with the raises, and there were raises, that Mr. Board Chair said. But maybe we need to see, what the wage study says. They made the comment they think that they'll be redlined. If that is the case, then we will know very soon, I understand. But if that's not the case, then we need to come back and we need to address this. And I would hope that we find that you guys are in the league. We appreciate the savings and the work you guys do. We just have to manage the budget. And even though it's only 33% of the wages, that's still what our job is. We're tasked with the money, so we got to make sure we do our due diligence. Hope you understand where we're coming from, Jim.
This
I
is
do.
not a referendum on the courts at all.
And there won't be no decision made tonight or even tomorrow night. There's nothing on the agenda that addresses it. So we do need some time to put all this information together, hash it out. I'm not quite sure how we do it because we have to do it in an open meeting.
I would appreciate it if you would give us some advance if you're gonna put it on the agenda.
Well, I
We'll
would-
try
I
to
would,
do that better next time.
I would ask that each individual board member actually get the information and look at it. Everybody's up here making a really good statement, but no one's looked at the information. No one's even got it other than Commissioner Holzhausen, Commissioner Marks, and Commissioner Master. So I mean, let's get the information.
I think we got the information, I think we ought to take a vote.
Well,
on
I
it
know
and see what
we looked at
I
it
make a
last month and we
resolution and make a vote on it,
we
so.
said, let's take a month to look at this. No one's looked into it. I mean, I guess I'm taking your guys' words, just look into it and see what you come up with, see what you find, and see what you,
We're gonna let it go for another month then?
If I may.
that's
I mean,
the interest of the board.
I think we ought to make a resolution.
I've read the materials
One way or
that
the
were,
other.
I've read the materials that were presented at the committee meeting, and I've heard the discussion here. I have a couple additional questions that, we'll pursue, but to suggest that we don't have the information, I guess I'm wondering, what other information should I be
Just asking.
seeking out?
I'm just asking for you to get the information.
And I'm asking what specific information should I
What
be
information do
seeking?
you have, Commissioner?
Have you read the October 26th memo?
I have both of the memos here.
And then the June one?
Yeah, the one from
15th.
regarding reorganization, and then I saw the table and the chart, and again, I've heard the discussion tonight, so if there's other information we don't have, I'm just asking, what would that be?
And I got you that information on Monday. So we're just look it over and see what you find.
I have looked it over, and I still stand by my comments. I think that we should not rush to judgment
Yeah,
tonight.
he's gotta think about it.
I think we ought to take a vote one way or the other and be done with this.
I think we just go on to economic and fiscal development. I think we ought to move the meeting on. And we've got a consensus that we're gonna wait and see, and so we'll just do that. Not to overrule you, Mr. Chairman, you make the decision on what you want to do. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I think in fairness, I would like to kind of soak up this information a little more myself.
Well, if any of you would like to sit down with myself or Ms. Bray, we would be happy to sit down with you and talk one-on-one with any of you. So,
My biggest issue is raises, and we do agree that there were raises given. My biggest issue is how the raises were given, without the continued raises that were given, without the approval of the commission. That's my biggest concern.
All departments can do it now.
I think that's all.
It's all legal, every department can do it now, so. You guys all come on, we're all raising them up, so you don't have to have board approval. All right, well, that's small to get us started.
Thank you very
all
much.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will let you know.
Might as well be the bad guy.
I think
We're gonna move on
I
to
work that.
economic and physical development now with Commissioner Pasquarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item A, I move to consider amending ordinance number 17-01-01, imposing a moratorium on the issuance of permits, licenses, or approvals for wind energy conversion systems, and authorize the board chair to sign all necessary documents.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Is everybody clear on this, that this is an extension of the moratorium?
I think we ought to debate it and think about it for another month.
All right, Gary. I appreciate your comment. But we have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item B, move to consider amending the Shiawassee County zoning map for property located in section 10 of Bennington Township, parcel ID number 010-10-10-005-01, a portion thereof, from A2, agricultural production, rural residential, to B2, general business, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion?
Yeah, this is a big deal in Bennington Township, and their board didn't approve it. I think we'll have to, postpone it for another month, decide on, think about it some more.
Well, I'm glad you
I'm
brought
trying
up
to take you serious.
I'm glad you raised that, Commissioner Holzhausen. As you know, we did discuss this at the committee on Monday evening, and I thought the parties with the township were going to go back and have a conversation. I'm just wondering, did that occur, and is there any progress from that conversation? It seemed like there was some consensus on a path forward.
We have not had a conversation. We had a board meeting Monday night after the meeting on Monday, and both parts and Commissioner Ruff were at part of that meeting where we did to talk about this. And bottom line is we're pretty married to our plan as a whole. That's what we discovered that night. We're married to our plan. We want to move forward with it. We just think it's to go from 20 acres of B2 in our township to nearly 60 is a pretty big change without being part of the plan, and we'd just like to put this through the planning process and
So an opportunity to enter into contract zoning for the upzoning to B2 then is not in the interest in this specific case of Bennington Township.
that was a consensus of our board is we want to be married to our plan, and if we in the planning process, it's quite likely to change substantially. But that's the plan we're going forward with at this time.
So if I may, again, just being new to this, and not in the history of the development along that corridor, but we talked about and listed off a number of the businesses now that have been cited there. And I'm just curious then, they're operating, is it spot zoning? How has that all occurred then?
Most of the businesses that are outside of our plans for business area are working under a special use permit. When we look back through the records, the most recent special use permit granted was in 1986, S&K Farm Yard. And there hasn't been anything since then. So those are long-standing businesses that were put into place, 30 years ago.
So those are outside of like like for instance, that's outside of Grand River 52 where the doctor's office is.
Yep.
Or
Yeah,
or the
outside,
storage units across the street from the gas station. That's,
yeah, those are in our, that's in
That's
our
in your-
designated area for business development.
So to be clear then, you guys, this would be, correct me if I'm wrong, and Pete's not here, this would be your last chance to have some input over this piece of property, and you guys are saying, that's okay, proceed, you guys will work on your master plan for future properties.
We're gonna work on our master plan. We're still opposed to making a zoning change at this time.
Even
For
with,
this people.
even with conditions on that use.
Yeah. Because it's such a huge,
Right,
Change.
but so this is, I guess what I'm saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is their last chance to potentially have some control over the zoning of this, because it's gonna be the county, and then it'll be the site plan, you guys will work on your master plan, and maybe have input on future businesses. So this is your last chance
on this piece.
on this piece, and you guys are okay with that?
That is our last chance on this piece?
Yeah.
No, we're not really okay with that.
So then why are you saying that it's okay? I mean, we're asking, they asked at the meeting, we asked at the commission meeting, do you wanna have some input, some conversations, and now we're getting no, so, correct me if I'm wrong, we're gonna vote on this, it's gonna change, there'll be a site plan, and it's going in, and they have no control.
I
Correct.
sense they didn't want to acquiesce. Their
Right.
CDP indicates A1.5, and that's the desire. And, I have to say, there's a reason the townships do these plans, and a reason that they're updated to provide for the future plan and zoning in accordance with a public process, in accordance with state statute. And I've been here 10 months, and I can count, not even on one hand, how many times I'm seeing these plans being overridden, and I'm just struggling with that. Again, what message do we send to the townships?
That's why I'm
What
asking,
message?
like-
It sounds like this county really needs to be a little bit more thoughtful and focused on if we're not gonna use these plans, not have the township spend the money, I just am at a loss here on why we go down this road.
One, Mr. Faber, you've been kicked out of this conversation now for the second night. My question to you is, could you give us a little clarification as to why you want that number of acres?
Yes.
I mean, I know, but just to help the commissioners here understand why you're
Of course.
asking for that and why B2, why not wait for a special use permit?
By all means, yes. So I guess I'll give a little bit of background about myself. 32 years old. I opened up a personal training facility in Bennington Township, Fitness Coliseum, back in 2011. I purchased the old Bennington Hills Golf Course 2016 in February. Since then, I've done a lot of renovation. I've invested a lot of money, looking at investing more into this barn, which with this total investment will put me over the 1 million mark into Bennington Township. So the reason why we're asking for this much acreage is because we're going to take into account consideration of the neighbors and everything else by building this facility about over 1,000 feet off the road. So it's going to sit halfway back on the old golf course. You know, again, by doing that's going to take a lot more money, you know, with putting natural gas in, electricity, drive, everything goes into account with this. So we want to basically construct it halfway back out in the middle of nature so sound is contained. You know, it's been asked, why don't you put it up towards the road? Well, that's not what we want to do. We're looking more towards the long run of this, and people want that outdoor atmosphere when it comes to events. You know, so I'm in this for the long run. 32 years old. I bought this property specifically for the property itself. I have the trails. I have 4 miles of trails on it that we use for walking, running. We have the obstacles on the old putting greens for people to come out. You know, we're looking at more going towards the corporate team building, getting more companies from not just in Shiawassee County, but the Lansing area, Jackson, the Detroit area to come to Shiawassee County to do some team building skills with us. You know, I've been a personal trainer for 7 years now. I love what I do. I actually love land. You know, I was actually approached for the Dollar General before it was brought onto the other site, and I turned them down for that. You know, I am part owner of the property on the corner of Bennington, the southeast corner that you kind of brought up on Monday. It's 600 feet. It's 600 feet between the two. And there's no houses, there's 2 houses up front, but between the existing commercial property and Fortitude or the old Bennington Hills Golf Course is 600 feet. You know, it's been established since 1971. It's not like I just bought a farm field asking it to be rezoned. There's been a current business there for 46 years. You know, so it's very well established. People that know the area, they know Bennington Hills Golf Course. The gentleman that spoke on Monday was Myers. He was really good friends with Brad Van Pelt. It's an icon of Oahu, so people understand that. And you know, we want to kind of carry on with that tradition by creating, you know, having events like that. So I'm in it for the long run of this property. I have no intentions on selling off, parceling off whatsoever. Again, I'm 32 years old. I love what I do. I love my job. I don't even look at it as a job. I mean, I get to control people. You know, it's boardroom, so to say. But no, I just wanted some clarity to provide that. I didn't get the opportunity on Monday just to exactly explain what I'm doing here. You know, so the whole idea with the 37 acres is it's parallel with 52. It's the building's going to set back over 1,000 feet. So you know, essentially, we need that instead of having a puzzle piece all over.
Thank you. If I may.
Wait a minute. For either one of you to answer this question, whoever has the answer to this question, and because I need some clarification. Pete came into this conversation in your meeting that I was attending, and it's come up that it's been stated that this could not be done as a special use permit. Could you explain, were you told that?
Yes, so I approached the Ash back in, I think it was March or April, proposing the idea with the barn, this and that. He suggested go with a special use permit. Well, I contacted the county. They don't hand out special use permits for stuff like that. That's when we went to the next step and okay, how can we get everybody to work together? Pete set up a private meeting to get it started. We met, and then it went to the planning board, denied, went to the township board, denied. You know, so I followed all the steps. I didn't just go right to the county and just jump loops. I like working with everybody. I want to work with everybody. I'm not going to say I can make everybody happy. I've learned that, especially in the fitness industry. People want to lose weight. Well, I can't guarantee that. I'll try my hardest, but you control what you put in your mouth. So, so this has been discussed since roughly around March. So again, we tried a special use plan. Pete said they don't hand them out like that. So,
And your understanding?
That's the same understanding we got from Pete, is I think we were on board to work with him on a special use permit. Pete said we can't go down that road.
So the bottom line is you don't have any option. If you want to do this, it has to be done by,
Correct.
it can't be done by a special use permit, which is typically your procedure.
That would be, because he's already got one on there that allows him to do most everything he wants to do with this new facility anyway. And he's utilizing that now. His business plan is not a huge change from that.
Right.
You know,
I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go to the business plan. I learned my lesson in your meeting. I learned a big lesson in that meeting.
Well,
But it's not about the business plan. But Pete has told both of you that special use permit won't work, that the only way it can be done is BT. That is your only option.
correct.
That's your understanding as well.
that's my understanding as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, Mark was, he's been
So
chiming in.
I certainly appreciate this gentleman's intentions, his ambition, the goals are lofty, and I believe he'd be very successful. The challenge with zoning is, for example, the upzoning occurs, something happens to you, whatever that may be, you're no longer owner of that property. So that intent and that use is wide open for the next owners of that parcel. So I'm not questioning your motives, what you're suggesting here. The challenge for us as a governing body for allocating land use rights like this is that we're all here for just a little while, and then the land will be used by others for other purposes. So we have to take a long view here, and I appreciate what you're doing there, and it'll probably be very successful, and one day you'll no longer be there. And that's how we have to look at zoning in this county. I think my experience is SUPs historically have been abused in this county, and they've been issued far more frequently than they should have been when upzoning should have occurred. And we've allowed that to happen. And now we're starting to see some of the challenges with past decisions. That's why I'm drawing attention to this issue, the importance of the township land use plans for responsible, prudent development on the landscape. Because invariably, landowners change and uses change, and they're not always congruent. In fact, quite the opposite. And residents, residential neighborhoods, they have property rights as well as business owners, and it's trying to balance those rights. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So.
Here?
I kind of agree with him too. Nothing's written in concrete. I don't think everybody understands the county planning commission. They approved this project. So, and just like he says, there's a lot of things that doesn't happen right, and maybe not perfect in this thing, but we're going to have businesses here. So all those things we turn down, there's not going to be in business. I mean, according to him, we're anti-business. So, and I like to see business so we get more revenues, give people raises, and everybody succeeds.
Just for the record, I'm pro-grow. I'm for
Doesn't
responsible
sound like it,
grow,
so.
where these uses are congruent.
With that, you mentioned that.
Well,
call
take
for
a-
Wait a minute. Okay. We do have a motion and support.
Call the vote.
It has been,
With
it
my
has been
Mr.
called
Chair,
for.
Mr.
It's
Chair.
already been called for, I'm sorry. Okay? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same.
Aye.
Aye.
Votes 5-2. Motion moves forward. Thank you. And thank you all for your participation. Item C.
If I may, just for a point of parliamentary procedure and clarification, I didn't make that last motion to start the discussion. I had planned to withdraw my motion.
We call for your vote.
Well, that's what I was trying to do, is withdraw my motion. So for the record, would have the notes reflect that I wish to withdraw my motion before a vote was called on it, even though I did vote no on that motion. Thank you. Item C, move to consider authorizing the 2017 Shiawassee County Annual Apportionment Report as prepared by County Equalization and direct the spread of taxes in terms of millage rates to be spread on taxable value.
We have a motion? Support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item D, I move to consider authorizing release of the lien upon payment in full and mortgage discharge from the rehabilitation improvement on the property located at 214 Mack Street, Corona, Michigan, 48817. Authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item E, move to consider authorizing the letter of support for a countywide effort to apply for a $300,000 grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Authorize the board chair to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Pascarelli. County Finance and Administration, Commissioner Marks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on to item A. I move to consider authorizing the purchase of a plow blade from Owasso Hitch and Plow Center for the amount of $7,358.00 to be paid from the repair and maintenance budget 101-265-930 and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
My theory, we just had a brand new plow and a new truck, and ever since I've been here, we've only had one truck, and I don't think we need two.
We didn't get a new plow, did we?
We did not, we put a 10-year, we put a
Well, it's just like
10-year,
it was never been used before.
10-year-old plow on a new truck.
10 years old.
It was never used though.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate, I don't want to get a dead horse, but my concern, my suggestion that we move along on getting the other vehicles and the other junk plow ready for sale.
And I am working on that.
Thank you. All right, we have,
Do you want that attached to the motion?
No, just discussion, and I'm just saying, I know we talked about it, but it's still, and I know we talked about finding the titles, and I know Jeff's working on it, but still.
we could
I
make sure
think
that's
Patty
communicated.
has done her work, she's waiting on me, I've held it up a little bit, the last week or
And
so.
I'm not gonna propose an amendment, I'm not gonna do it tomorrow, I'm just saying,
If you could restate that for
I just,
Caroline, so she can get it in the
we're
notes.
purchasing a new plow, there's an old plow and two old trucks that we need to dispose of.
And I will have something will be done before our next meeting.
Excellent, thank you, Jeff.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion moves forward. Item B.
I move to consider authorizing a 3-year contract for auditing services with Raymond Robeson in the amount of $35,500.00, $37,000.00, and $37,500.00 for the years 2017, 2018, and 2019, respectively, to be paid from 101-202-805 and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward. Just as a point of clarification for the audience, generally, we will be taking roll call votes on anything that requires spending of money. That will be tomorrow at the Thursday meeting when the Board of Commissioners meets again. This is just simply moving motions forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving to item C, I move to consider authorizing the Veterans Affairs Committee to use donated funds from Fund 293 and capital outlay funds from Fund 291 to purchase a 2018 Ford Flex vehicle in the estimated amount of $14,700.00, which represents half the cost of the vehicle, with the other half of the cost being paid through a DAV grant. The total final cost will not be known until after January 1st, 2018, and delivery on the vehicle will not be taken until after mid-2018.
Support.
We have motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Moving to our final item B. I move to consider authorizing the renewal of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Administrative Services Contract and Stop Loss Agreement for the period of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018 for the administration of the Shiawassee County Self-Insured Health, Dental, and Vision Plan, and authorize the board chair to execute all required documents.
Second.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Public Safety and Courts, Commissioner Parks, please.
Make a motion to consider authorizing the 35th Circuit Court to contract with Michigan Drug Court Grant Program for the period of October 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2018, in the amount of $22,000, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item B, motion to consider authorizing the 35th Circuit Court to contract with the Office of Highway Safety Planning Grant for the period of October 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2018 in the amount of $75,050 and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item C, motion to consider authorizing the 35th Circuit Court to contract with Swift Insure Sanctions Probation Program Grant for the period of October 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2018 in the amount of $38,000 and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item B, motion to consider reappointing Ruth George to the jury board effective immediately to April 23rd, 2023, or until a successor is appointed, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item E, consider authorizing Shiawassee Central Dispatch to purchase equipment from Zyvax Systems for the dispatch raised consoles to the desk with table management and power supply outlets for connectivity, work surfaces, CPU cabinets, storage cabinets, resources cabinets, and stand in the amount of $61,401.90 to be paid from line item 216-325-970 and authorize the Director Lieutenant Pam Bancroft to sign all necessary documents.
Motion? Support. And support. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was here yesterday and, I thought it was way too much money, but, just for that, but it is awful expensive, but, she kinda explained it, all the details of it, and kinda set me a little more straight, but I still think it's expensive, but we have to have it with the new technologies.
That's right. That's exactly the point. It is very expensive, but in order for the new equipment that is already there, she needs this equipment to make it all work. Any other discussion?
How are we coming on 2018 expenses? We've talked about that.
Pretty close, I'm just looking for a few more quotes on some things, but we're getting pretty close.
Okay.
So,
Good.
Do you have a motion?
I can have quotes, I can guarantee I can have.
I was gonna ask, but I kinda let that go, so.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes your report.
Thank you very much, Commissioners, for taking my job. All right, Health and Human Services, and Larry, stand by. I probably butchered the explanation of these various parts that most of them will already be using.
So, item A, I move to consider authorizing the health department to contract with Memorial Healthcare for the period of October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018, and authorize Larry Johnson, Health Director, to sign all necessary documents.
A motion and support. Any further discussion?
Yeah, the
Larry,
first two
clarification?
contracts are STD contract for referrals. One with Memorial and one with Convenient Urgent Care. The Convenient Urgent Care is for after-hours referrals. We will refer to Memorial if it's within business hours. It's a fixed rate per referral, so
Per
per
visit,
person,
right.
per visit. And that amount is in the contract, and I believe it's $60.
And it's on an as-needed basis,
And
so
as
there's no total amount.
The goal is to not need it as much.
Right.
Ballpark, like, how much a year?
We're doing about probably 30 to 40 referrals
A year.
per year, and the number has been trending upward.
Are you reimbursed for that?
Yeah, in the state. Hopefully next year we'll be able to take some of that stuff in-house. See.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Item B, I move to consider authorizing the health department to contract with Convenient Urgent Care for the period of October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018, and authorize Larry Johnson, Health Director, to sign all necessary documents.
Motion and support. Should not be any further discussion, although it could be an excellent description. So, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same. Motion moves forward.
Item C, I move to consider authorizing the health department to contract with Michigan Department of Environmental Quality in the amount of $33,389 for the period of October 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2018, and authorize Larry Johnson, Health Director, to sign all necessary documents.
Motion and support. Larry, you're on it.
Yeah, this is our environmental contract with the DEQ for reimbursement for campground inspections, public swimming pools, public water supply. It's about on target with where it was at last year. Pretty steady. And this DEQ contract pays us to do the inspections.
Commissioner Castro.
I just had a question about the actual sampling, the lab. Who does the lab work on this?
We use WaterTech.
A private company and the state, the health department?
We do not use the state health department lab for very many samples.
I'm curious why. Is it just lack of capacity?
Since the Amtrak's threat a few years back, it's very difficult. Security getting in and out of there and stuff.
There's a number of issues that we've had with them. Postal was a problem, and I don't know if that was the postal service or the lab. Bringing samples there was the other option, but then you have to pay staff to drive down there. With WaterTech, they courier up here to the health department, and we have a drop site at Buildings and Grounds where we drop our samples, so it's very convenient. Price is comparable, so there wasn't much difference in the cost, but there's been some challenges with the DEQ lab.
Sure, fair enough, thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, the same. Motion moves forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner McMaster. It brings us to our chairperson report.
You got nothing.
He's got nothing.
We had a full meeting.
God,
I have nothing.
what happened? All right, other agenda items. Anybody at all? Any other agenda items? I mean, other commissioners. All right, hearing none.
I have no idea what one. Dan, Shear, Commissioner McMaster, your report on the veterans.
My veterans report is just about done. I'm going to have it reviewed by a couple legal people to make sure I have everything correct. And some of the background stuff we have in there. Plan presented at the December meetings, which kind of falls in line with discussions we've had this week about boards and transportation and some other issues. So.
Thank you, Commissioner McMaster. Anything else? Commissioner Chairperson. All right. Brings us to our second public comment, and I do have one this year. If you would like to speak, please fill out a little slip there and hand it up here. And You're up, Joseph Schneider.
How you guys doing? Give you guys a heads up. I noticed you guys are put on there $14,000 for the DAV van, correct?
Correct.
Is if you go through the DAV state department, it's roughly only $15,000 for a van through the DAV. But then you have to come up with the mileage, and usually they swap out the vehicles, want us to do fundraisers and all that when it reaches about 150,000 to get one on the books so we could get it transferred from DC up here. But if you guys plan on buying it outright, you're paying double. Just put that in your mind. Not always those grants go through.
Okay. Yes, Gary.
Yeah.
You have a question for
No,
Joseph?
no, I just, a little bit of background on that. They never even had a vehicle until a few years ago. Ford Motor Company donated one, so that's all they got. But they never even had a vehicle since I've been here. So they just put mileage down and people took them there. It's nothing like that. So,
I know their number.
so I don't know if you need two, but that was,
Well, their number.
everything has moved up a lot since, last.
Their transportation needs have increased tremendously.
Yeah, but they never had one at all several years ago.
But things
Zero.
get better sometimes, and, because they have to transport to Saginaw.
Well, they still did it, but they just paid people mileage instead, so volunteer.
Well, I think we're having an issue with transportation solution countywide now, with them not being able to put out as much transportation, so it's costing our veterans office more, so I think they can, with another, I hope we're not paying double for the van, but if we can get another one, it might help. Maybe, but what is the deal with transportation solution? You guys have to pay them.
We have to pay them if they're out of district, which for one veteran to go one way to Ann Arbor Hospital is $180. That a veteran they can't afford that. I think it's $360 just to go through our hospital, a doctor's visit. It's not feasible.
And we have the numbers that will support our need and our mileage and.
Just in response to Gary's comment, what, if a private individual were to volunteer, what are the liabilities of using their own car to transport a patient, not a patient?
Very extremely high. That just is not even economically,
I know we used to do
repercussions.
it.
If one veteran fell getting into your vehicle, the repercussions of that can be astronomical for the county. It just is safer through the DAV. It's a DAV van. The drivers are all trained. They're knowledgeable. We have guidelines set.
And
It's
it's
safer,
insured
and it's insured.
through
Yes.
someone so it doesn't come out of somebody's pocket. Any other discussion or questions in regards to that? Any other public comment? This is your chance. All righty, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion? Say support. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All right,